we have a pretty sizable panel here, and our first step will be giving everybody a chance to introduce themselves, introduce a couple of the key issues that they dealt with respect to implementation of the program, and I think also a couple of key points that you want to make sure that the audience will walk away with, in case we don't have time for everybody to answer every single question. So maybe we'll start over here with Sean.
Okay. Is this on?
I think the bottom.
I'm not sure.
I think it's on. There we go. So first of all, I just want to thank the City of Calgary. I think this program, has a lot of success. I think one thing from an industry perspective and from our association's perspective is the dialogue that we now have that I would suggest we had very little of in the past. And moving forward, I think it's going to be really good for the entire industry on many different levels. And I think this panel will discuss where some of those real benefits will come into play now that we're actually working with the municipality of Calgary, but hopefully with the province and eventually with the entire country. So I think this is a really great step that I've been involved in the industry now for over 25 years, and I've never quite seen it to this level. So I'm quite excited about what I see in the future, because I really do believe our industry has some very significant challenges. But I think if we're all working together, we can actually get through them. So that's my comment to start with.
Great, thank you very much.
Stephen Potter, RC. We've been involved in the industry for a long time when it comes to sloped and commercial. We do a lot of non-biased work for the insurance companies, doing hail reviews and looking over roofs. And I would certainly support Sean that I think that this brought a lot of the issues when it comes to what happens during hailstorms. The companies that come up and the workmanship that is done to light to many more people. And I hope that in the future, this is followed up on and that all of these class 4 roofs were put on. And in order to assess that success, we actually have to look at them down the road when the next hailstorm comes in order to determine whether or not it did reduce any of the items when it comes to landfills.
Great, thank you. I'm Ted Koleff. I'm with AMA Insurance. I was going to wear my bow tie today, but I think the really smart guys in the room are doing that. I'm certainly not one of those. So I wore my regular tie. So we're Alberta Motor Association Insurance Company. We're based here in Alberta. So hail is something we live with not only when it happens, but pretty much year round, dealing with the claims that result from hail claims. We have some really interesting experiences with these last 2 catastrophic events, and we do have an incentive rebate program built within our policy. So it was really interesting, some of our observations is how that interacted with the city's program, and maybe that's something we can talk about later today.
Great, thank you, Ted. I think we have a mic here.
Hello. Oh, yeah, you can hear me. So I'm Greg from Calgary EliteRoofing, the president and CEO of the company, and we did probably close to 800 claims from insurance, directly or indirectly with the customers. We installed a lot of the class 4 impact rated products. Overall, it's a great success. I don't think anybody in the industry can say that it's not. From an economic perspective, but as well from an environment perspective, something that I wanted to mention concerning the class 4 impact rated product is most of the time those products will last longer on the roof. A typical roof will last 12 to 15 years. Class 4 impact rated product, you can get 20, 30 years out of it. So that reduces the amount of asphalt you put in the environment, that's for sure. I did an inspection, I will say 2 years ago, with class 4 impact rated products. The first one was installed in Edmonton 27 years ago, and it's been through 5 hailstorms and it's still in very good shape. That being said, the class 4 impact rated products are hail resistant, they are not hail proof. So the product will work to a certain level of the storm. The regular hailstorm will work. After a certain level, it will not work. Yeah, that's my introduction.
So my name is Kevin Kramers. I'm with the Alberta Roofing Contractors Association. Early on in the process, we were approached by the city of Calgary, and I worked quite closely with the team, especially with Michelle, on developing the checklist, developing the standards. So that was great to have that working relationship with the city of Calgary. And our big three things that we wanted to identify in this program and get more education on it, which is one of the great pillars, is the standards, to make sure that those roofing standards are adhered to. And as I was happy to hear Justin say, you know, the minimum code is the minimum code, but without sounding like an HGTV person, there are better way to do things. So we look at our standards, we look at the quality application, and to give the kudos to the inspectors as well. That unbiased third-party inspection, we think is crucial, because then, you know, it gets that end product where it needs to be, where we've all seen some pretty horrific things that haven't been inspected, and really leaves the homeowner holding the bag. So we were really happy to join in on this program.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick Patrick Magnusson from Intact Insurance. Intact has had a impact resistance, or rather a resiliency rebate program post-loss since about 2018, plus both siding and roof. So I think this was an interesting way to sort of dovetail into this program. We've had varying degrees of success with that, and I think there's some good lessons, and I think more education we get out to continue to build that momentum is fantastic. Interesting that you talked about the sort of the inspection process. Some of the feedback that we got was that it was a little onerous to go through that from the contractor standpoint. However, as a good check and balance, and clearly the program was successful in spite of that, so I think it was probably a good check and balance to have, regardless of that fact. That it was maybe a little more difficult, but more difficult for the right reasons, and still made the program successful. So I think that was an important element.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. So after those brief comments, we would open up the floor to questions. I've got a few, while people are mulling over their own questions. I think I'll apply the same model as Justine, and I'll go around with the mic for those who have questions. But I think across the board, everybody on the panel, it'd be really good to get your thoughts on some of the next steps that were proposed by the City of Calgary. And I think one important one that we'd like to talk a bit more about is the regulatory change, the changes to the code. Justin mentioned the requirement for IR shingles in areas of Alberta or Canada that are prone to hail, and potentially also underlayment requirements. So it'd be good to get everybody's thoughts on do you see that as the right approach? What do you see as the right approach, if not that, to ensure wider application of these better practices? We'll go the same way.
All right, so coming from the industry, both on the contractor side and the association side, what I noticed was the whole code idea, I think is great. But for us not us, I won't speak for myself, but I know you guys know that it's not a fast process. It never has been. So I think where we're moving is great, but what do we do between now and then is where I'm at. I think if we're all being real honest with ourselves from an industry perspective and an insurance perspective, I'm sure the insurance guys can talk about this, right? Degree of success. The reason we had success here is because the city stepped up and offered a rebate program, which put forefront that this even is available to the homeowner, right? And homeowners obviously responded to that, is the successful program that you guys had. Personally, how I see this moving forward was, where do we incentivize the homeowner, or how do we incentivize the homeowner? The insurance companies, I think, are doing a great job, and I think Michelle talked about earlier, right? How the last part we had a lot of tire kickers, I think is how you put it. Well, those tire kickers probably occurred because they weren't aware of the fact that maybe they didn't have a hail claim. Maybe they did. A lot weren't aware that the insurance companies offered a $2,500 rebate in a lot of cases, along with the rebate from the city. Once you added those two things, it made a lot of sense financially for them to upgrade that roof. Where I'm going with this is that I see this program where maybe the city or the municipalities involved in this would offer a long-term incentive, i.e., how about a tax reduction on our property taxes for everybody that had a class 4 impact rated roofing system, wall system on their building, so we're not having to deal with this. That makes it a long-term incentive for that building, no matter who owns it, right? And the insurance company is partnering along with and saying, hey, we know that we've just given a rebate to our client or this particular property, and that property we know has a hail resistant or a hail-proof exterior on it, right? And so it's a long-term effective, taking that value of the property up at the same time from a long-term basis. Because as contractors, we're seeing jobs that we have to go back to because they don't spend money on that. So that would be my comment is what I'd like to see incentives. I think there's a program here that we could work out that would keep everybody incentivized to want to keep using a program like this, and we could track the results of that too, how that process goes.
The idea of the code change is great, and I'm very glad that I don't have to be a part of that process. The modeling is there for the climate, like anything else, snow load for the areas that it should be in, and it's definitely workable. With builders and costs, that'll be a different thing, same related to siding. As for underlayment, it's basically something that's already there. Multiple manufacturers do have it as a requirement for their shingles, and while it is recommended, it is unusual now to find a roof put on without underlayment.
And we obviously support any code changes that will reduce the effect of these events in future. I'll sort of answer the question, but I wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what was said earlier, that you know, we do have a $2,500 rebate program, and we made every effort to educate our policyholders, our customers, that it was there. Virtually none of them took us up on it until the city's program was announced. We were able to go back to each and every one of them and repeat not only that we had a program, but that the city had one, and that we could help you apply for that as well. Then the uptake went through the roof. Can I say that? And we had quite a few people come back and take advantage of not only our rebate, but presumably applied for the cities. So that's where we think the real juice is in that incentivization.
Great, thanks. Yep.
Just one point concerning because we're talking about the roof, but ultimately we're talking about building envelope on the exterior totally. And just to come back to Stefan's points, I think one of the critical points at some point is going to be the siding more than the roof. Typically, the homeowner was able to save $3,000 on their roof. A typical roof in Calgary, like right now, well, the price changed a little bit like lately, but you'll be around like $15,000 to replace your roof right now. So that represents basically a quarter or a little bit less of the entire bill. For the siding, it will not work like that. And even if you're doing the same program for siding, like $3,000 will not be enough, because your typical house will be around $20,000 to $25,000 to replace it with vinyl, which is not hail resistant. And if you go with a KWP or stucco or the RD board products, you'll be more toward the $45,000 to $50,000. So on the next hailstone, then will happen probably this year or the following year, you're gonna face this problem. So the roofing side is maybe not the biggest side right now. Will most likely be the siding.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, so you're finding, because of the relatively small incremental cost in Class 4 roofing shingles, you don't think that a code change is necessarily the key approach, because people are sort of open to using these products anyway?
Yes, like since the beginning of the program, I will say we saw a big shift because the way we offer our job, it goes from Class 2, Class 3, Class 4 impact-related products. Before the program, 75% of our jobs was Class 2 to Class 3. Since the program, 75% of our jobs are Class 4 for two reasons: for the rebates and also for the education piece.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Just to speak on the building codes, I'm probably with Justin. We actually don't read ours going to bed. We read ours Sunday afternoon just for pleasurable reading. But for us, the standards and the building codes are in place. But what I find more with the calls I get even day to day with homeowners, and this might be for Michelle on future education, just people just don't know
Yeah.
where the building codes are located. They don't know what they state. And most recently, they've been made free for everybody in the country. So you no longer have to go and spend $347 and get a binder from Ottawa. You can just look online at the latest PDF and the current building code is there. And I just don't think a lot of people know that, so
Right.
more education, pushing people that way,
Okay.
it couldn't hurt.
And to clarify, that's because you were dealing often with re-roofs, so for existing homes, and the homeowner would have to be aware of that code requirement. Is that the context?
That's the gray area, so,
okay.
yeah, but for new builds, building code is in place.
Yep.
But also a lot of people are phoning us saying, my house was built in 1992 and it doesn't have a drip edge, can I go and sue the contractor?
Right,
Well, no, it was built to the code,
right,
so just so they're aware of what the minimum standard is and where it's located.
right, okay, good, thank you.
On the siding piece, one of the interesting phenomena, one of the interesting pieces that we had, because during the claims journey where we talked about our incentive program a fair bit, at the initial time during the adjusting process, when they talked to the vendor that is doing the roofing. So we had cases, maybe not so much for the 2020 event, but the 2021 event, where they took the $3,000 from the city, did the roof, and then took our $2,500 to do some of this, to do the siding. So I think that element worked. I'm glad the code change isn't on the siding for the number side, because when code changes, then that triggers other insurance elements. So there is a sort of, when that code changes, there becomes a sort of a financial piece on the insurance side that we have to then cover that, but that's okay when that time happens. Insurance incentives happen after the loss. And I think what we're trying to hope is we don't want the loss. So if we think we built right the first time, build back better is a great motto, but building it right the first time is an even better motto. So if they can have those class 4 roofs before there's a claim and just avoid the claim, I think that's where we're pretty happy about that one. And that could help sort of balance out the long-term costs of any sort of incentive programs that we provide.
Okay, great. Any questions from the audience? Please feel free to raise your hand anytime, and oh, here we go, Michelle. I'll grab this mic.
Yeah, so I was, can everybody hear me?
Just yell. Just yell.
I really, it's I really appreciate what you guys are talking about with respect.
I really appreciate what you guys are talking about with respect to code. But I think part of the opportunity for education, this is a question to the panel in terms of perhaps how we do this, is I think a lot of people consider a code essentially either a best practices manual or a standards of practice manual. It is not. It is, if you did a worse job, it is illegal. Like, it is the bare minimum you have to do to avoid prosecution. And I think because of that, we have an education opportunity that, I think Michelle touched on this when you were saying we requested things above code, and we did. We asked for drip edges where the code doesn't. We asked for accessories, etc. And is there a way to, in the eyes of people in the industry, to help the consumer, whatever that mythical person is, understand the relationship of codes, practice, and what you're actually paying for? Because they are not the same thing. And I'll be very honest, I did code enforcement for about a decade or so for the city of Calgary, and we struggled with that literally every day. The idea of a code as being like, well, that's how I build. And it's like, no, that is the worst you can do, which is not how you ought to be. If your aspiration is avoiding jail, you're not really a top shelf contractor. So I guess I'd love your opinion on how education that would convey that to consumers.
So, can I answer this one?
Go
Part of
ahead.
it?
I'll
jump on that one
The problem we're facing with code as well is we have different codes. So, and you get the manufacturing perspective. So from the manufacturer, so let's say you're gonna use anywhere, we're gonna take an example, a Euroshell product, for instance, they're gonna have their own specification. Then you have to follow to be able to get the warranties and the manufacturing warranties. You get the building code and you get the code from the city as well. And those three sometimes overlap the right way, but sometimes they don't. And you as a contractor, you have to pick the one who makes the most sense and the one who offer you the warranty, which is typically will be the manufacturer. And that's something you have to be careful with the code, and that's why sometimes I think from the city side, like staying a little bit away from it will be probably a good thing.
I really appreciate that question, because I think it's very, very valid. As much as we're talking about codes and all that, and I think it's great we're heading that direction, what we're experiencing in our industry is the fact of how many industries are you aware of when an event occurs where you have hundreds or more people entering into that market. And now all of a sudden the people who are established in the industry are trying to compete against guys who don't have proper insurance, don't carry liability insurance, don't have safety programs, don't have all that stuff that we in our industry should have, because this is a dangerous job that we were doing, okay? What we have to get to, and this is our association's goal, to a regulated industry in the province of Alberta. Then all the insurance companies and the consumer who don't know about codes and everything else, all they have to know is that as an association, we only have members that have met the requirements that are way above code. Our installation manual for our association is not code. We would not require, it would not be one that we would accept as a member, right? Because we want people doing work properly. We want knowing if there's a situation where things go wrong, and they do go wrong, even with our own members, that member goes back and deals with that homeowner, right? We've been approached by the province through Consumer Affairs, because Consumer Affairs being inundated with people being called saying, hey, we gave a deposit to this roofer, he's never come back. We've done this, they have nowhere to go, and then Consumer Affairs has nowhere to go because these guys aren't established. We have to change the industry. I'm excited the fact that we're interested about quality products. We should be. What we have to do is change the people that are doing the installations of these things. And when you're gonna have people competing, and guys who do inspections can maybe speak to this, right? I think we've seen improvement in installation based on the program the city put in place. Bravo, that's great. But we have to change this industry so that one day we're not all competing just for we're all fighting for that really low dollar. When you're fighting for a low dollar, you get low work and quality of work. And we have to move out of that model, right? And unless we all work together, City of Calgary, our industry, the province, to say, how do we change this so that we have quality people doing quality work in a dangerous industry? Let's be honest, all of us own a home for the most part. And if that roof fails, and the roof fails dramatically, what's the end result? And if we can talk to the insurance guys about this, right? It's pretty significant. And how do you get out of that? You have to change the industry, okay? So, sorry, I get excited about that.
There's a lot to that. There's a lot of inspections that are out there with all of these different people. And obviously we were inspecting roofs as per the program that were not done by member companies of the AARA or ARCA. Those are two very different organizations. I would find it very unlikely that an ARCA company completed one of the roofs. That not being a bad thing, they're a very commercial organization. There's a lot more standardization and there's a lot more that's there to their membership. It needs to be done in slope proofing because it's so easy to go into. Money-wise, everybody goes and they look at commercial because there's more liability, there's more money behind it. At the end of the day, when you look at Calgary and since 2012, all the hailstorms that have happened here, all of the companies that pop in, pop out, that chase hail, that are not there, that do not follow it, really the amount of money that goes into the two different sides of the industry, if you look at what was done and the expenses put into this, there needs to be that same standard brought up in residential work as there is in commercial work. And there is horror stories. People don't get up on their roofs. In commercial, you're more likely to have them inspected, looked at yearly. They're doing maintenance, they're managing an asset. People are going up on the residential roofs and doing whatever they want, and is the homeowner gonna go up there and look at it? Like, they don't know. And that's not there at this time, and it's definitely something that should be. And education, this program has definitely helped with educate people to look at it, to call the ARCA, to call the AARA, and actually find out more information about who their contractors are.
Thanks. Any responses, Kevin? Actually, I'll take that.
Well, as both of my esteemed panelists say, like it's the standards. When people phone us and they ask for our standards represent best roofing practice, which is quite a bit above what the code is. And to quantify what Sean was talking about, during the recent hailstorms, we monitor the WCB stats for roofers in the province of Alberta, and it went from just over 1,000 people who had an account to well over 2,000 people. So over 1,000 companies popped up to storm chasers, right? And they provide that taillight warranty so that when they leave the province, that's your warranty, is their taillights fade away. So, you know, we have to be careful of that and get a change it so it's not always that way.
Thank you.
I do want to.
Sure.
Thank you very much. So I have a question for the insurance industry and I have a question for the city, and it is about contractors. And I might be wrong, but Intact used to have pre-approved contractors. And people in this room that took the consumer calls were working with people who were considered approved, but were really not very good. So my question is, how do you sort of recertify those people? Because they may have changed hands, they have deteriorated in quality, and yet they're still on your list. So homeowners feel safe, but then are unhappy. So is there a mechanism to be sure those people keep current?
I don't know if I can answer that question, but I can answer an element of that question. If they're a relay vendor, that's our group of pre-approved contractors who are our partner contractors, we warranty their work. So if it was a situation where it was a relay vendor installed a roof and there was an issue with the roof, we will go back and we will fix it. I think that's our promise and our guarantee to our policyholders, that making sure that they will get the end result and be back into the position that they were before the event.
Okay, thank you. And then to the city, and I don't know who from the city can answer. I'll look over here. The licensing process for somebody to get a license to be that one of those 1,000 roofers that came into being. What is the process? Is there any check and balance on, do they have a WCB account? Do they have any insurance, or is it just a fee?
The answer is so the only thing that would be required is if they need provincial licensing, either taking pre-approved payments, taking deposits ahead of time, they might require the provincial bonding process. Beyond that though, it's just a fee.
Is there any opportunity to make it more than that?
Yeah, so that's a great, part of that actually ties into the idea of bringing it to be a registered trade. So if you look at, the closest analogy that comes to mind is electrical permits. So in order for a contractor to take an electrical permit, you must be a master electrician. Like that, so that is part of the permitting process, is demonstrating those qualifications. In a field that does not have a registered trade, it becomes doubly difficult. So Josh's answer is absolutely correct. I will go one further, if I may, just because I don't know if people realize this. Most people are familiar with the idea that replacements don't need building permits. So a single family home, if you're shingles for shingles, like replacement is fine. You don't need a permit on that. Weirdly enough, I can also do a 300,000 square foot warehouse on commercial roofing right down to the Q deck and not need a permit. And that is a really weird thing for, again, I'm going on year 16 of this and I still don't fully understand why that is the case, because Q deck rusts, there's a whole bunch of weights that you change equipment out, it's structural loading, there's diaphragm protection, there's a bunch of things that all go into this. And I guess, you know, I think maybe one of the things we would need to discuss as in forums like this in the future, is it actually appropriate for commercial roofing to not require a building permit? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's worth asking ourselves, because you know, when we talk about things, and I hate to bring it up again, but energy efficiency and retrofits, what is the appropriate roof loading now? Like that, when you take a commercial roof off, did you put on protection board? Did you put an underlay board? Did you check the Q deck for rust and diaphragm strength? Did you change the equipment? Did you change the insulation type? Did you change the insulation thickness? Do the roof pads now have the appropriate clearance to make sure water doesn't flow into your HVAC unit? Like, those are really foundational things that make a very, very expensive roof work, and nobody looks at them, which is weird to me, but I'll just throw that out there as, to me, part and parcel of the conversation of education, how to do this well, and what is the appropriate checks and balances for the industry, to be really honest.
So I'll just answer that if you're an ARCA contractor, all that is taken care of. So I think the big difference in that, Justin, and I'll be honest, is usually in the commercial applications, there are quite a few professionals involved in re-roofing, be it the engineer who specifies it, be it the structure, and we're getting more and more into it now. Structural engineers have to go in because additional loads such as photovoltaics or additional is being put on. So those checks and balances are in a way in place, as well as the inspections are in place, right? So that's something that I think is missing from the residential side, that the commercial side does have a pretty good grasp on. And whoever is replacing that roof, if they are also acting as the designer, they carry that liability and that general liability in their policy for that design, and they are responsible for it, and they know 100% that if I install a roof that's gonna be too heavy that comes down, even down to the plumbing vent being blown down 2 blocks away, that is their responsibility.
I fully agree with you, Kevin. But we have all of those checks and balances for a large number of things, and we still ask for permits on, because it never hurts to have that second set of eyes, et cetera. And again, I'm not proposing we do or do not need one, but it's always been an interesting point of discussion for me, where it's kind of.
I'd love to buy you a coffee someday and we could talk.
Let's do that.
Just to go back to the insurance portion of that question, and I'll add to what Patrick said. There are insurance and claims professionals from some of the really large insurers in the room, and I can guarantee you that every one of them has a preferred or a recommended contractor program that they vet constantly, annually, quarterly, whatever their program is, so that the contractors, and I'm pretty sure that all of our friends here on the panel are on these programs, because we're so concerned about shingles are us showing up after a hail event, and it happens all the time, and we're required to tell our policyholders that it is their choice who does the repairs. We will recommend these companies, but in the end, it's up to them to choose. And if they choose someone who, what did I hear? They just pay a fee, they show up and pay a fee. We can't stop that. So our work is about educating and creating awareness amongst our policyholders as to why it's important to use these contractors we're recommending. It's not because we get a kickback. It's not because we're friends with them or they take us to lunch. It's because we know that they're the ones that are going to do the work. They're going to do it right, and they're going to make sure that your home is repaired properly.
I think you should bring up the industry.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment about that. We are a registered trade in the province of Alberta, just so we're clear, right? Roofing is. We're a registered, recognized
We're a
trade
recognized trade.
in the province of Alberta. So we already have established that. It's just a matter of working. Like, I think that's a great comment. Why don't we have it for all roofs, new and re-roofs? I don't know what that would do for the city as far as paperwork, but I think it would eliminate guys running around with trucks and ladders trying to be in the roofing industry. So we're having lunch on Thursday.
I'm buying though.
I spoke a little bit about the barriers to entry in the roofing rebate program that we had, and Ted, you just talked about educating homeowners around why they should do what you're instructing them to do with whom. And I'm wondering if there's opportunity, or if the insurance industry is already headed down this path of removing the barriers to understanding the policy that the homeowners have with you. That was actually identified as one of the mitigation actions early on in our engagement sessions, that a lot of homeowners don't actually understand what they're insured for or what their coverage means, and whether or not we can move to more of, layman's terms when it comes to sharing code. We were talking about, yeah, it's great that code's free, but nobody understands what's in there. Same with the policy. So are there measures that can be taken to help educate homeowners, your customers, clients on what is actually in there and what their coverage actually means?
Plain language policy.
Well, that would be the best thing. You know, it's the policy is, I mean, it is a legal document, so it has to sort of be as clear as it can be. Certainly when we write them, and that's one of the things I do. I'm not a claims person. I'm on the corporate underwriting side because I love to write wordings. But you know, to put it as plain language is certainly one of the goals. And particularly when we talk about roof, you know, we try to make it as clear as possible. If you have this roof and it's this old, this is the kind of basis of claim settlement that you will see. Ultimately, does the layman understand it? Maybe, maybe not. And that's the role of our broker or the insurance advisor, is to have those conversations with the customer. I think our adjusters and even our preferred contractors also do a great job in explaining what the coverage is, what coverage they have, what incentives are available, you know, where the deductible lies, and those kinds of elements. But certainly there is a self-insured component when it comes to roof and roof replacements in Alberta, and that it is certainly an element within there. And you know, the older the roof, they may not get the full value, but that's where some of these incentive programs come in. And I think that's also part of the value of moving to a Class 4 roof is, and to having one originally when you're building it properly the first time, is that cost you incur when you build your house or when you replace your roof, not as a result of an event or a claim. You easily recoup that over time by not having to pay your deductible or any other sort of adjustment component, right? So I don't know if that really answers your question, or I guess I didn't answer it in plain language, but yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit. But certainly, we try to make it as clear as possible to say that, you know, you have a replacement cost policy, but it has these sort of conditions around it, and like I say, we try to put it into a chart to make it as simple as possible. But you know, the limitations and exclusions have to exist. But we really do rely on our brokers and our advisors to have that conversation with customers for sure.
People like Patrick write these wordings in the rooms, and then after the events happen, the claims people have to try to explain what it all means. Plain language is a term that we use now, and most companies, all companies are trying to simplify their policy wordings so that they are easier for policyholders to understand. Nevertheless, you all probably have looked at your policy, and I'm sure there are sections of it that you have trouble understanding. The job that we have after these losses occur is trying to help people understand what they're covered for. There was a really interesting wrinkle in the Northeast Calgary event in that there were a lot of people who we were communicating with not in their first language. That makes it even more difficult. So it is really, really important that the claims people can sit down with and walk through what you're covered for. Is there depreciation? Is it replacement cost? What do all of these things mean? In the end, Michelle, there's another thing that insurers, all of us, are doing now that we never used to do, and that's the reach out and communicate before the claims happen. We used to just take your premium and hope nothing happened, and then next year we take a premium again. Now every insurer has websites that educate, that have email programs. We are constantly reaching out now to our policyholders to try to give them the information they need, one, to mitigate or to avoid losses, but also, if they were to happen, what we're there to help you with and what you're covered for.
Great, thank you. My question is for everybody, but it comes across differently, I think, for insurance
and then for roofing. So if I can start with Patrick and Ted, whether there's 1,000 or 2,000 licensed roofers, you have a list of people that you're looking to work with. To what extent are you trying to achieve or trying to articulate that there is a goal that you are trying to achieve? This is what you are expecting in this resolution for your policyholders. Are you trying to have all of those contractors achieve something similar that is the insurer's goal on behalf of the policyholder? For all of our roofer friends here, there's at least 100 insurers covering homes in the Calgary area. Are they giving you the same message? Are they all asking you the same thing, or are they asking you different things? And what does that mean for the partnership working together of you're serving the homeowner, but you've got the insurer involved in the conversation, and are they all saying the same thing, or are they giving a slightly different, are they absent in the message, or are they part of the message? Anyway, I hope it was the same question but slightly different. You want to go first? Or?
I can go first on the contractor side of it. A lot of it comes down to education once again. The hard part when you're dealing with insurance is because every single customer has a different insurance policy with different conditions. So they really have to go through their contract to see if the product is being prorated or not, how long it's being prorated, if there is a 5% depreciation per year or 10% depreciation per year, what's their deductible? Is there like $1,500 deductible? Sometimes it's $2,500, sometimes it's $5,000. So it's on individual case. So us as contractor, what we do typically is we try to help them understand how it works the general rules. But when you go, like, I don't know, I see probably 1,000 a year customers who they all have the same insurance company but different policies. And some has 100% coverage, some have 50% coverage, some have 30% coverage. And that's why it's so hard to put a general rule for every customers, because they're all individual and they're all different from insurance and from insurance the policy holders.
Patrick has a question, or sorry, Patrick has a response.
Yeah, I think you did put a good point there. I mean, every customer is unique, and every customer is individual, and every risk is unique. And that's when it comes to rating. We look at individual rating. When it comes to the claims journey, it is going to be a unique journey. But I think the fundamentals are there. And I think when we talk about the customer journey through the claims process, there are multiple touch points with the adjuster. It's not just they submit a claim and then off you go to your contractor. So we have an adjuster team that guides and walks them through that process. We work with the contractor, obviously, through that element. But the end result, Paul, to your question, is we're there to sort of support customers in good times and help them be resilient in bad times. That's the slogan. If Charles was here, he would say that in a French accent. It sounded really much better than I just said it. But that really is the fundamental goal. And we need to put them back into the position that they were. And hopefully, if they take advantage of the incentives, put them back into a position that is better than they were before, which of course is not one of the fundamentals of insurance. They're never supposed to profit from it. You're never supposed to be in a better position, right? But this is a case from a societal perspective that they need to be. The more people that take advantage of these in a better position, it's better for society as a whole. It hits our climate targets. It prevents losses. It creates the conversation around loss mitigation. Because we're talking about roofs, but there's 20, 30, 40 other things that individual homeowners can do to prevent loss or damage. And I think in the education component of this came up in the very beginning. And I think that's such a critical element of it, because it's not just about the dollars at the time and how much money can I get if I do this, or what will my premium savings be if I do this. Forget all that. But how do you, having a claim is not a great process. It's not the best customer experience. The best customer experience is to not have a claim. So what can they do, what can customers do, and how do we get the conversation around loss mitigation and loss prevention? So whether it's a water claim or a wildfire claim or a hail claim or a wind claim, that they just don't have those losses, or if they do, that it really minimizes the impact of it. So post-claim, yes, we want to get them back to at least the position that they were in, preferably a better position that they were in, And ideally, they never have that claim, they never have to talk to us in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, no.
Not a lot to add to that. Really, our goal is to protect the things that matter most to you, to the customer. And really, that if it's your home, it's your auto, it's your family. But you know, Paul, we don't go in there saying our goal today is this. You know, your life is a shambles after an event like this. Our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you to have your home repaired. And that's really the bottom line. And that's how I hope our people approach every claim is, this is not about us, about getting this done quickly or cheaply. It's about putting your life back together.
With the insurance and all of the discussion on the differences in claims and the discussion of codes and qualities of roofs, most insurance is like, kind, and quality replacement. So as already touched on earlier, when it comes to cost, in that if there is a code change and everything goes to class 4 in a section and there was a loss, the insurance companies would have to do that. It already comes up all the time. It came up with eaves protection. Well, that wasn't there when we took the roof off. Well, it doesn't matter that it didn't meet code, it needs to meet code now. So there's multiple ways that already happens all the time. Where with insurance, I know there's some policies that do upgrade to code, but most are like, kind, and quality. So there's already arguments there. When it comes to cost with insurance, everybody's looking for the lowest cost and to have some savings there. So when it comes to drip edge or even things that were asked for by the city, that question came back during that. Well, it wasn't there when we did it. It's like, kind, and quality. You know, you have to pay extra to put that back on. So those things came up regularly, and it's a constant in this. And one other thing there, but I missed it now.
Maybe it'll come back to you. I think fundamentally at the end, if we're being honest with each other, what we're trying to do is, how do we protect the homeowner? How do we protect the consumer, right? The city wants that, we want that as an industry. At the end of the day, if you think, I hate to use this word, but policing the industry, right? Is the city gonna police the industry? Probably tax that consumer. And not to put this against the insurance company, but I had clients contact me and say, yeah, I've gone through this, I've gone through the process, I've had a hail claim, I've got their preferred vendor here, and they're interested in dealing with us for different reasons. And then, you know, okay, well, they send me the quote, and I had one, it was Bob's Painting. And I'm like, did you send me the right one? Right? And they said, yeah, that's what I got from the insurance company. So I'm just trying to say, at the end of the day, if we make the industry a point where we're all following the same standards within the industry, because we're regulated to follow it under a standard that we've created as an industry, we will, as an industry, police it ourselves. We will make sure that the people that are in our industry actually know what they're doing, or actually doing quality work. Because at the end of the day, we can put the best product in the world on, but if it is not done right, it's irrelevant, right? So that's what we have to get to. And that's why I think with the city's help, the province's help, in the insurance help, right, we'll all get to the point where our industry, like, would you want your house installed with an electrician that, well, I just learned it, I went on YouTube and I figured it out? I don't think so. We won't want that, do we? And we don't want to have, I think the city said was 180 some applications for people that made business license after the 2020 storm or something along that lines, and let alone the 1,000 other guys. We have to move away from where that's not where we're at. We have a strong industry with people that are in it, are strong players and have the right people in place, so that when a catastrophic incident occurs, and we all agree it's going to happen in Alberta again, it's just a matter of time, that we're not inundated with so many people flooding our market and making it so difficult. Supplies, I can't tell you how hard it was to get supplies during some of this stuff. And we were fighting against other companies. We should not be in that spot, and that's where we are in this province. There's so many jurisdictions in North America that we could take examples of. Colorado is a really good one because they have a lot of hail events go on there. You should see how like, if you want to become the industry, you can't get a business license immediately. It takes you 6 months, and it's a process, and you have to follow the stuff. That's what we have to have here, right? And then we don't have to worry about, is the insurance guy's got the right, it doesn't matter. This is the only people that are available to you, people that are qualified to do your work, that know how to run their business, pay their suppliers, and we have a solid industry. We have not had one the entire time I've been in this industry for 20 plus years of my life. And any of us who are in this room that have been in this industry for a long period of time, I think would agree. It has been an industry of flux. Hailstorms, it goes crazy, all the hail guys leave, and everything crashes. Rise, crash, rise, crash. Develop a strong industry on something like that. It's very, very difficult.
Okay, well, we're just about on time here for the session. Just one last question, I think maybe for Kevin. We had a call last week, and you mentioned that you're involved in some work at more of a national scale and a technical committee that's considering not just hail protection, but other aspects of resilience that concern roofs. And I'm wondering if you could comment on how the experience with the Calgary event might kind of serve as an example of where we might go with other types of hazards.
Sure, so we sit on the Canadian Roofing Contractors Association, the National Technical Committee, and that's kind of our arm to the codes and also to the National Research Council of Canada. And right now they're doing testing on resiliency of steep slope roofing when it comes to underlayment, when it comes to, you know, putting in a standard for a more resilient building envelope. So usually the way the practice goes is with the National Research Council, they do a draft specification or draft standard, sorry, I just missed the word there. So they do the draft standard, then it goes to the CSA, which then get incorporated into the codes. So that's kind of their route to get it in, but they're talking to my counterparts there, they say resiliency or they say climate change, they get money thrown at them. So, you know, they're using that to do all of this type of testing, mostly on, there's a lot of commercial applications, but they're also turning it into the residential side as well now too.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who,
Justin just raised.
Oh, Justin.
Is that a materials and an installation guide?
Yes, it would be.
Great. Thanks again, everyone. Excellent discussion. We allowed more time for this panel. I think it paid off. We had great discussion. Thanks. Several takeaways, I think, for ICLR. One thing is the hail impact resistant roof cover is a good start, but it's not where we need to end. We need to go much further than that. There's a huge amount of discussion concerning quality of installation and